I believe Sam Clovis probably has 60 rounds of freedom there, don't you, Sam?
At least 60 rounds.
Sam Clovis
I won't tell you how many rounds, and I won't tell you how many firearms either.
Well, you never know. The Democrats could win, and we'll be searched in our own homes for firearms, because Sleepy Joe cares so much about us and our freedoms and our comfort. I keep seeing these letters to the editor in some of the papers, and I subscribe to the Morning Register, Cedar Rapids Gazette, Iowa City Press Citizen. I haven't got the Sioux City Journal yet because it's not that good a newspaper, I don't think. But anyway, there's always letters to the editor. They're just pleading with. They want a president who cares. They want a president who thinks about them and their plight in life. I thought to myself, there's 300 million people in this country, and you're sitting there whining like this, that you want a president to consider what's happening in your life? Is that the ultimate narcissism? I mean, is that get in the door free at the DNC to be an ultimate self-absorbed narcissist, or what?
Well, I was having a conversation with one of my therapists today, and about this very thing, and I was relating to her. I said, "Now, who's to blame for that?" And we as my generation as parents are, because we bestowed on our children the fact that we allowed them to get participation trophies instead of insisting that there be no trophy. I'll never forget. We were in Springfield, Virginia, and when I was stationed at the Pentagon, and I remember when we first started doing Little League, the only kids that got trophies were the kids that came in first, second, and third in the playoffs. There were trophies for first place winning the league, but then we had the playoffs, and that was where the rubber met the road. So but there were no trophies for anything else. When we played soccer, we were playing with a totally different set of parents, or many different parents. And those parents insisted that we have trophies for everyone for participating. And the soccer team I was coaching was abysmal. It wasn't the players, it was the coach was awful, and I was the coach. And I remember we didn't win it. I think we won one game and tied one game out of 8 or 10 or 12, whatever we played. And the parents insisted that they get trophies, so they went out and bought trophies for them. And I'm sitting there and said, we didn't win anything. Well, no, we don't want to bruise their self-esteem. I said, you're kidding. Oh, no. And when I pushed back, I really got chastised, not harshly, but gently, that I was not enlightened enough to really be part of the cool kids in that particular neighborhood. And I looked around me and I looked at the people doing this, and I said, they're all frickin' liberals. No wonder. And so, my kid didn't need a damn participation trophy. He won enough trophies for winning. I don't need one because he came in dead last in the league. What the hell's up with that?
I don't know.
That was the turning point for me, and said, I've been in DC too long. I need to go back out and get with my people in my area of the world. So that's when we were on our way to Valdosta, Georgia, and that would have been ripe Trump country today.
Just a quick story. I kind of goes along with what you're saying. Years ago, back in the 80s, I ran into a guy that I was in high school with, and he'd been a high school teacher in a town in Iowa for quite a long time by that time. And I asked him, as part of our conversation, what's the difference in schools today and education today as opposed to when we were in school? And he didn't even hesitate. He said, the kids all have lawyers.
Yeah, well, that's true. They all have access to lawyers, and they all have access to the internet.
The three words I didn't want to hear was, I'm going to call your dad. I'm going to call your
heavens, yes.
dad.
I'll go to the principal's office. I'll do in-school detention. I'll do anything, but do not call my mother. Do not call my father. And the principal did call my mom and dad one time, but it was to let them know that my congressman was on the phone wanting to tell me that I had an appointment to the Air Force Academy.
Now that's better.
That I remember that. Yes, it was. And a quick story. So I'm sitting in class, and one of the girls from the office comes down, and Ruth Bays, I'll never forget who it was. Ruth comes down, hands Mr. Smith, my math teacher, a note, and we're still got 10 minutes of class. He said, "Thank you." And she looks at me, a big smile. And so we're going through class. And then after class was over, Mr. Smith, who was the assistant principal, which meant he was the enforcer, he says, and he didn't like me very much. So because I was a chronic, a congenital smartass. And so that was the problem I had with him.
That's why you turned into a talk show host in later life.
There you go. It is genetic. And so Mr. Smith said, "Mr. Clovis, you're wanted in the office." I said, "Oh, no." So I went down there, and class, that was my last class because I was going to go to track practice. And I go down there, and I get to the office, and the phone is sitting on the counter, and one of the secretaries is there. He said, "Sam, it's phone calls for you." So I pick it out. It was Carol Suarez from Congressman Garner Shriver's office. And that's when she told me that I had my appointment to the Air Force. I already had an appointment to West Point. I'd had a month earlier, and I was sitting on it. I was hoping on this appointment, and sure enough, it came through. And I said, "Can I make a call?" And he said, "Sure." So I called the house, and I talked to my mom. And she said, and I told her, I said, "Mom, I got the appointment at the Air Force Academy." She says, "I can't keep this to myself. Carol had called us. Called me, called your dad at work, so Dad would be home at 4:00. I said, "Well, I'll be home for supper." And it was such a night of celebration. And then one of the hardest things I ever did was to sign that card and send it back to the military academy and tell them I declined the appointment. But I was on my way to the Air Force Academy, as they say, the rest is history. That's my story of being called to the office.
All right.
Yeah.
Sam Clovis is our guest. He has a long resume, including working for a short time in the Trump administration. Let's talk about Donald Trump's re-election chances. Like in 2016, most of the really pretty and bright people, at least I think they are, like Nancy Pelosi, really, they believe they've got this locked up. Trump's a buffoon. We've told lies about him. This ridiculous lie that Trump turned to Robert Kelly at Robert Kelly's son's gravesite and mentioned to Robert Kelly, "I don't get it. What's in it for them?" Talking about veterans sacrificing their lives for our country and way of life. That's a bald-faced lie. Can we get that out in the open now? That is a slander by a major political magazine, The Atlantic, in the United States of America. They should be reduced to National Enquirer status. That's just ridiculous.
I was with him every day for 6 months, every day, for 6 months, from August to March or April, March of 15 to March or April of 16. And then I talked to him at least once a week, all the way until September or October of 16. And then so the whole issue there, as I was a veteran, 25-year veteran in the Air Force. He paraded a lot of generals in front of him. I was underwhelmed with most of them, and that included Michael Flynn. I thought he was about Mike Flynn. I didn't think he was really about the president or anything else. And I do think that Mike got a raw deal, but at the same time, I really was concerned, and I went to Cora Lewandowski and I said, "I really think, the boss needs to be careful around this guy." And so because I just don't think that he's all in. And so Corey went to the boss and told him, and And so I was careful about what I said because, when Trump said, oh, isn't he impressive? Oh, he isn't even impressive. Well, yeah, they're impressive. And yeah, they had a high rank. And yeah, they got approved by the Senate. But, and the great big but. And so I said, you got to be careful of these guys because they're using this as a way to insinuate themselves into the cabinet, into the White House, yada, yada. And sure enough, Flynn and Kellogg and some others that worked their way in. I was never enamored with Mattis at all. John Kelly, never at all. Never liked him either. And I think that McMaster was a really bad choice for National Security Advisor.
Why did he pick him?
All of these. Well, why did he pick him?
Yeah.
Because somebody there. Because Trump, he's enamored with all the bells and whistles and the uniforms and the commands and all of that. But I knew some of these guys coming up through the ranks, and I had heard about them, and I heard it from other guys that knew him, went to war college with him, and that kind of stuff. And McMaster was one of them for sure. That I had firsthand knowledge of him. And I was shocked when he picked him because McMaster was a never Trumper. And I was always shocked that Trump would pick him. So somebody had to steer McMaster to him. Somebody had to steer Kelly to him, had to steer Mattis to him. And those are the guys that 4 stars make terrible secretaries. 4 stars make terrible chiefs of staff. Because they're used to military operations.
That's right.
Even though they're political, they're still used to military stuff. And everybody, when they bark, the whole world shakes. But their chiefs of staff, nobody gives a shit who you are.
Easy with the language there, Samuel. Easy with the language.
Pardon my French. I'm sorry. Pardon my French. But nobody cares. I'm sorry.
Jim Mattis
I'm blaming it on the drugs, Mike.
Okay. I always blamed it on Jim Beam, my old friend, but I don't know.
There you go. Well, I don't drink, so I have to blame it on. I apologize.
They don't have any bars or liquor stores there in the Veterans Hospital in Sioux Falls? I mean, what's going on?
No. In fact, I haven't seen my wife since March. So that's
you haven't seen your wife since March?
That's correct.
Wow.
Well, that's the flu and then COVID-19.
Oh, man.
No veteran has seen any family members since March.
Oh, for God's sake, I'm sorry to hear that. So that's Donald, right. and I got to get to this here. Donald Trump, again, was being portrayed as he's dead on arrival come election day. Right. Now, the Democrats are acting a little scared. Bill Maher was on the air the other night with Joy of MSNBC. She replaced Chris Matthews, and Matthews couldn't have been gone too soon as far as I was concerned. Joy Reid, and Joy is a liberal, and so is Maher. And Maher was talking to Joy that he thought that Biden would lose. And Joy Reid, to my astonishment, said, I'm worried about that too, because they are a couple of party line liberal Democrats. And they don't want to ever admit that Trump's going to beat them. But here they are on the record, on the air, saying, yeah, I'm worried that Trump's going to win. Now, you and I aren't going to worry about that. We have a different worry that Biden will win.
Right.
But what do you think? Do you think that Bill Maher and Joy Reid should be frightened or not?
I think they should be worried. I think there's a lot of movement right now. Of course, you got to remember there was no way we were going to win. We were down X number of points in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania. And when I started looking, Newt Gingrich said something. He says, you got to look at the polls and see where they are. And you got to look at the crosstabs. And I started doing that. I haven't looked at the crosstabs. What that means is you go ahead and you open the poll, and then you can go on the poll and you can start to see the sample size. You can start to see the breakdown of who was polled and who wasn't. If it's likely voters, the spread between Democrats and Republicans. The sample size to me is one of the most critical factors. If you are sampling 400 people of likely voters, that is not a very big sample. You need a much larger sample. When you're sampling 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 people, then those polls are going to be a lot more accurate. The other way is, how do you take the polls? Do you take them on the phone, or do you take them on the internet, or do you use a hybrid of that? Then, because the internet is really it's like a push or pull poll, and what that means is it's highly unreliable data from an internet poll, because there's no way to control it. In fact, and telephone polls, most Republicans are not going to answer you truthfully, if at all. And so you're likely to get Democrats to be enthusiastic. Here's my theory, and this is a good thing to throw out here, and we can get on the other side. But here's my theory. I think the Democrats are worried about the erosion of their base, and they are out there trying to shore up their base right now because they think that their base is moving away from them, or that the base is not going to vote. And that is, they don't have a high turnout, they have no chance. And that's kind of what I see happening.
Yeah. Well, and of course, these nonstop riots and ugliness around the country, and innocent people being attacked, their property destroyed. And when we get to see mugshots of some of the arrested people, they're hideous. They're white punks on dope. That's all they are. I mean, they're back of the woods street people in some cases, and the media has been desperately portraying them as peaceful protesters for months. And it's starting to catch on to this, that they're not peaceful protests, and the media is lying again.
Well, but they're getting caught at it. The other thing is, if you'll notice, a lot of them are female teachers.
That's what
they're
I understand.
educated white women.
Yeah, they are.
This is when you see them arrested. They're educated white women that are the ones that are out there. They're the ones doing the rioting. They're the ones fomenting this. This is organized. This is not random.
No.
This is not your pickup game. These are people who are actively organized, and they're out there doing these things. And this is the thing that is mystifying to me, is how is it that these women are able to get away with this and be away from work when we ought to be out there educating kids? That's the thing I don't understand, how that happens.
Well, it's almost a state effort in Oregon. I mean, the local attorney or the local district attorneys dropped charges on 600 rioters. The governor, Kate Brown, is also, if asked, all she can say is Trump did this. Trump did this. And Mayor Ted Wheeler is a fool. I mean, geez, how can he be described any other way? He's a brilliant man, well-educated, but if he's not a fool, he's just a coward. He's unreal.
Well, but I don't worry about it, because it's a blue state run by blue Democrats, and they're going to have to pay sooner or later they're going to have to pay the price for this,